Hey, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Lori Obazinski. I'm the Director of Client and Partner Relations with Rosy Salon Software, and I am joined by Erin, the President of Qnity and Qnity for Schools. So good morning, Erin. Thanks for being here. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm so excited to be here.
Great. So if you've been following along with our best practices series that we've been doing, this is our third one, and I could not think of a better person to get on here and share some financial wellness best practices with you guys than Erin. She's amazing at what she does. Qnity is amazing, and I've had the pleasure of knowing her and the Qnity team for a few years already, so she's going to have some amazing and really good financial information for you guys to take away. If you have any questions or comments and anything that she is sharing with you today, there is a chat box in your control panel. So you can go ahead and drop any questions in the chat, and then we will visit those at the end of her presentation. So Erin, take it away.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lori. And I'm really excited to be with all of you this Monday morning. And so hopefully, finance, depending on where you're at in your business and in your life, finance may or may not be your favorite subject to talk about. And I'm looking at two screens, so I'm going to go this way and move you guys. There we go. Then I can look at you. So yeah, it'll just really depend where you're at in terms of how you feel about the topic of finance. And I encourage you, as we kind of get started, to think about some of the first words that come to mind when you hear money. And so what I've got populated on the screen here, I think really illustrates some of the reality around money in the beauty industry, right? So this word cloud here, and I'm going to populate it, is really demonstrative of how people feel about money. This is actually a survey of over 3,000 beauty and wellness professionals, and we asked them what the first word that comes to mind is when they hear money and math. And look at the negativity around these answers, right? Pain, problems, ew, nope, scary, overwhelmed, right? And so it just demonstrates that we see a huge level of fear and angst when it comes to money from members in the professional beauty industry. This is also a survey that we take from both students and professionals that are actually in the beauty industry servicing clients, whether or not they've been in there for 2 years or 50 years. 68% of professionals state they have some form of money or math anxiety, right? And unfortunately, typically when we fear something or have angst around it, it usually means avoidance, right? It usually means we avoid the topic of finance. And that's one of the things that we really see quite prevalent in salons and spas is the avoidance of the finance function of the business. And so as Rosy or as Lori shared with us, or with you guys all, that we are really focused entirely on providing financial literacy and financial wellness benefits for salons, spas, and their teams. And so we also have an arm that works with schools and really teaches financial literacy to professionals before they actually enter the workforce. So as you're out there hiring and looking for talent, hopefully what we're really trying to do is provide another level of or another level of generation of professionals who really get financial literacy skills, so they understand it's not just about being great in their craft, it's about understanding the business and the finance component as well. And so I also like to really illustrate a brief note about our founder. Tom is our CEO. He's also my father, so we are a family owned and operated business. And this, everything that we do at Qnity is really Tom's experience and brilliance in his background, which he actually started in finance. That was really his initial focus, and then became a co-owner of a large multi-location salon spa. And it was really that transition from working in finance to being responsible for, over 400 hairdressers, massage therapists, estheticians, you name it, and really being focused on driving the finances of the business, that he really learned how to present money and finance in a highly simple and visual way. One of the things that we also know is that creative professionals, A, money is not the most important thing to them in life, and B, we're working with a very visual dominant workforce, right? So when you show a spreadsheet to a visual learner, you can often, kind of predict the emotions that they're going to feel, which is fear, angst, and dread. And so that's really why Qnity and other Qnity divisions have been formed. And so what we're going to really talk about today is we're going to focus on 2 gaps that we see, particularly related to your finance function. And number 1 is driving sales growth. So really focusing on the top line and driving sales through your service providers. And then 2 is, of course, on profitability. And so what I've done is kind of compiled what I think is the most important things to share in this short amount of time. And then if you have any further questions, we have lots of ways that you can continue and that we can support you. So that's kind of our agenda today. And so I actually would really love to use the chat box in a moment, because I'm going to ask you to really reflect on your own business. And so I'm going to give you a scorecard and a barometer, and I want you to rate yourself where your business stands on these next few gaps. 1 is terrible, no room for improvement. 10 is excellent, or I'm sorry, 1 is terrible, doing nothing right, stuff falling through the cracks. 10 is excellent, absolutely no way you could possibly get better. And so let's start out with revenue, and let's start out with growth. So what I've pictured on the screen here is 3 separate beauty industry statistics, and it all boils down to the 71% number, okay? 71% of clients do not return for a second visit. 71% of salon clients are never offered a product, and 71% of salon hours go unsold. So if we really round that out to overall revenue, on average, your service providers are missing 71% of their opportunities to drive revenue in your business. So this is a huge, huge gap. And so it really, there's a lot of ways that we can look at solving this, but I want you just to reflect on the bulk of your team right now. Okay, so this is not necessarily you, this is for you to rate the bulk of your staff. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate where you are at on your current revenue potential? Okay, 1 is, yeah, we're probably about that 71%, missing lots of opportunities. 10 is, we have no room to grow. We have no room to grow in retail, service sales, client count, we're all set, we're at capacity. So I want to hear where you guys are at on a scale of 1 to 10. Again, 1 being terrible, 10 being best. And I really encourage you to be vulnerable here. This is a place of no judgment. This is just for you to really reflect objectively on where you stand so you can start to make some change. So hopefully we can get some people to respond in the chat, but I'll keep moving. And if you're not going to post in the chat, I just want you to reflect on this and just give yourself an answer or even write it down so you can see where you're currently at. Let's see, lots of shy people in the chat box today. So we're going to move on to profit, which is the next gap. So this is the average profitability.
Hey, Erin.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Elisa. I just wanted to let you know people are posting in the question box. So I've got a couple of answers here for you.
Oh, great.
I've got a 7.5.
Okay.
I've got a 9 for client retention, 5 for others.
Great.
I've got a 4. I've got a 4.2. Oh, they're saying they can't post on message, so that's fine. I'll pick up on your questions, so no problem. I'll just have to verbally chime in here. But we got 7.5, we got 4, we got a 7, we got 2 out of 10 for growth, we got 9 for clients, 5 for others, 7, about a 5, a 4. So if that helps, thank you for participation.
Yeah, Eliza, I'll have you jump in. I'll have you jump in after this one too. That's fantastic. First of all, I also really appreciate everyone's vulnerability on that. And I love someone who said a 4.2. That's quite specific. And I love it. So again, this is just for you really to reflect and say, okay, we've got a lot of room on driving growth. And I think someone said retention was really strong, but maybe all other areas need some opportunities. So that's fantastic. Next is profitability. And what I'm showing you here is this is a huge gap in the salon and spa industry. Spas typically tend to have a higher margin. Salons specifically, that's the one that I've got here. And this research is a couple years old. We're actually working on new research to get more current numbers around this. But this is a huge gap. And I see this every time that we talk to clients. It's either many times they don't know what profitability is. They don't actually know what the business definition of it is. They also might say they're highly profitable. For example, I just was talking to a really, really talented salon, a smaller salon last week. She said she was a 9 out of 10 on profitability, and I peeled the onion a little bit and found out that she wasn't taking a salary. So she was considering profit only, you know, it just, there's gaps in understanding also the reality of that. So I want to make sure I don't go on kind of a rabbit hole around that. But I really want you to think about profitability, and this should be after an owner salary, right? Because you as the owner should be getting paid. And unfortunately, we see a lot of owners who are counting profitability without taking a salary. So this is the average. By the way, sometimes people don't know their profit margin. That's very common. And also sometimes it might be a lot lower than this, right? So this is just a general average. And what I want you to really see here is that this is a very low margin business naturally, right? It can be a lot higher though. And so it just takes intention to get that margin a little bit higher. So it's between 2 to 5% on average for the average salon. And really, profit is just what remains after all expenses are paid, right? So money in versus money out. What is the profit? So I really want you to rate yourself here on a scale of 1 to 10. And I would encourage you, if you don't know what your profit margin is, I would encourage you to factor that into your rating, okay? So this is not, profit is not a guess, right? It's not like, oh, I feel like we're doing good. And profit is also not the same as cash flow, right? Just because there's money in the bank, it doesn't mean that it's profit. So I really want you to look internally here and rate yourself on your profit margin. So Eliza, if you want to go ahead and share what we see in the comments, that would be fantastic. And again, no judgment.
Am I here? Wait a minute. Did I mute myself? Okay.
You're here.
Yeah. Okay. We're getting some 0s and 1s coming in on this one.
Okay.
A couple of 0s. Yeah.
Okay.
Question marks, probably not knowing.
Okay.
2 out of 10 on profit. Another 1. Yeah. Somebody who's looking to grow, they're giving themselves a 0, but looking to grow because they haven't been in business very long. So that's good.
Perfect. Again, you guys, I am super appreciative that everyone's willing to be very transparent. That is the first start to creating improvement. So you can see this is a huge gap just in also demonstrating the difference between the ratings, right? You know, you can see how where growth was, still opportunity on growth, but some massive opportunity for profit. Now, another kind of gap that we see and something that we're really working on from a macro level in the industry is helping businesses and their teams create overall greater financial wellness. And so financial wellness is really, it's very holistic, right? It's not just looking at your business. It's not just looking at growth and profit. It's also looking at your personal financial health. Are you equipped to retire one day? Are you taking active measures? Are you feeling a sense of peace and well-being? So financial wellness is a bit less tangible in the rating, right? You know, we'd have to dive in to really look at your full financial picture. But I really want you to think about this as well. Your overall financial wellness when you look at your current financial quality of life. And I want you to rate yourselves there on a scale of 1 to 10. And after you do yourself, I want you to take a guess for your team, right? Where are your service providers at on overall financial wellness? So you're going to rate this for yourself and your family, and then also your team. And I'd be curious to see what we see here.
Seeing a 1 come in. Five for family, 1 for team.
Okay.
3 to 4 for self, 2 to 3 for team. 5 overall.
Okay.
9 for myself, 4 for my team.
Awesome.
2 for self, 5 for team.
Great. All right. So
thank you.
I think just looking at this group here, right, we can all see what a great opportunity this is to learn something new and try something new. And so that's really the purpose of what we're going to be going through today. So what we're going to do is we're going to dive a little bit into those 2 gaps. So I want to go a little bit deeper into driving growth. I kind of wish I would have started with profit because it seems like that's where this group is like looking for lots of information on, but we'll go through both of these and then we'll give you opportunities on how to continue learning about this and making sure you're improving it for your team and your business. So when I'm talking about growth, okay, and we're going to look at this very specifically from the business perspective. So from your overall enterprise, we're talking about money in, right? We're talking about sales. And so here's some specific statistics that I mentioned at the start of it. And so there is huge opportunity, right? And that's what we see with students coming out of school and entering into the professional beauty industry. They are not learning on how to drive sales, the vast majority, right? They're not learning the specific skills to drive sales. They're learning how to be skilled at a craft, right? And so that's what we as leaders really need to make sure that we're equipping your staff with, because that's absolutely going to impact revenue. Now, I want to go back to this statistic, which is really recognizing that if you look at the statistic and apply it to your staff, the vast majority of service providers are going to have angst and fear, maybe a little bit of dread around talking about the numbers, right? So how you package it and how you talk about sales is very, very important, right? Showing them something like this is probably not going to speak to them, and it's probably going to have the opposite effect, right? I want you to tell me, I'm going to ask this question, what do you think a service provider sees when you show them something like this? Any guesses? Say any words. What do you think they see here?
Arabic, blur,
Blur.
Arabic, blur,
Arabic.
confusion, overwhelming, anxiety,
Yeah.
stars.
Yeah. So to put it simply, they see nothing, the vast majority of them, right? And whoever said Arabic, that's what Tom always used to say. It's like it's speaking Mandarin to a person who you know does not speak Mandarin and still speaking Mandarin and expecting a different result, right? So we like to take a very simple approach when it comes to talking about numbers with your staff. And so I also like to show the statistics just because it's funny. Nearly a third of Americans say they'd rather clean the bathroom than do a math problem, right? So there's, again, this fear not only in our industry, but a lot of people aren't really numbers or math people, right? And chances are they went into getting trained in an artistic craft, maybe even to avoid doing math, right? And so it's just something to take into account when you're looking at trying to help your staff drive sales and increase their performance. And so there's a really simple way that we like to do this at Qnity, and we've done this for years, and it's called 2-number growth, okay? And it really is teaching the 2 most important numbers to drive your business. So now I want to take another question and poll here. So if you were driving, okay, let's say I'm in Philadelphia and I need to drive to Texas, right? What are the 2 key numbers on this dashboard that I would probably focus on to get there safely? What are the 2 numbers I'd probably pay attention to? Any guesses? Driving a car, what are the 2 numbers or metrics that you really focus on to get you to your destination? Any guesses?
Gas and speed, speed and time, speed and fuel,
Correct.
speed and fuel, gas, speed, mileage, speedometer and fuel, speed, time, gas, time.
So whoever guessed gas and speed, I think there was a couple of iterations. That's exactly right. And so we like to teach this analogy, again, because we're trying to make business hyper simple and visual. And that's really the cornerstones of who we are at Qnity, is making finance simple and visual. And so just like you're driving a car and getting to a destination, the 2 most important numbers to drive revenue in your business are going to be client count and average ticket, okay? Clients, how many people you see; average ticket, how much that client spends in a given day, in a given week, in a given month, right? That now applies to the whole enterprise. So for the whole salon, what is the weekly client count and average ticket? What is the daily? And that also applies to your individual service providers, right? Every day, how can they focus on driving client count and average ticket? And average ticket is, of course, combined between retail and service dollars. And so these 2 numbers, if you're trying to break it down, what we see a lot of salons do is show a ton of different metrics, right? Focusing on productivity, focusing on all those different metrics. And that's fine, right? There is a place for given metrics, but usually those metrics are actually more helpful with leadership. And you can start to, as you start to coach your team, peel the onion and dive deeper once they really master the 2 most important numbers, and that's client count and average ticket. And so client count really is future focused, right? you're not going to increase your client count overnight. That takes consistency, that takes referrals, consistent driving of marketing, things like that, and retaining existing business. So what you do today will not show up today. Average ticket, on the other hand, is where we say you can make an ordinary day and an extraordinary day. And so that's really these two focal points that service providers can really think of in a simple way to make sure that they have a key focus on driving revenue. And so the interesting thing about this too is we've studied tons of different numbers, and universally client count and average ticket are the only two numbers that when you multiply together equal sales, right? There's really no other two numbers that you can have that simple of an equation on to equal sales. So if someone is trying to drive revenue, see more clients, have the clients spend more with you, they're going to drive total sales, right? And they're going to drive total sales for the business. And that's same with you as a business owner, right? If you can focus on driving each of those numbers, sales will grow, right? That of course doesn't address expenses and money out, which we'll get to in profit. So, and feel free to take a picture of any of this. But I'm also going to populate the actions needed and required to drive each of these numbers. So to drive client count, there's three core actions that service providers can take. It's referrals, retention, and rebooking, right? Then of course, marketing can support with making sure they're fueling new clients come in, but service providers want to be asking for referrals, retaining existing clients and rebooking them. And then of course, social has a play in that as well too, which could be bundled within any of those areas. And oops, sorry, I skipped ahead. And then for average ticket, they want to make sure they're always offering products in retail, they're adding on services, and they're pricing appropriately, right? So taking each of these actions is going to drive each of those numbers, okay? So this is your simple dashboard for revenue from a service provider. It's a lot different than showing a spreadsheet. It's a little bit more digestible or simple, right? So then we get into a specific tool around how we have people do that. And so this is actually a tangible tracker that we use. And obviously, Rosy is a great example of amazing technology, and there's a place for technology. However, if anyone remembers what I said at the start of this webinar, is the bulk of service providers identify as visual learners, which means it's seeing and doing. And oftentimes putting a pen to paper really helps create greater understanding of that. So they can actually understand how do their retail and service sales and total sales break down, and how are they doing on each of these numbers? And when they write it down, it just creates greater accountability. So when we work with accounts, we actually work with them to have their service providers use this, at least to start, and then have the leadership team track this kind of using technology as well. So that's a simple example of how we do that. And we have service providers do it over the course of 13 weeks. With a goal of increasing 17% in total sales. And so here's how you can see the version of leadership, right? So they can see for the whole enterprise, how are they doing with this tracker, right? This company, Studio B, grew 15% on retail and grew 19% on service sales. So, and then 19% on total sales and 18% on client count. So huge, huge results. And we also encourage different challenges to help make this stick. And we teach 17% for a very specific reason. Number one is it's simple, it's memorable, right? And also it's significant but achievable, right? 17% growth for many is selling a couple more products a day or seeing a few more clients a week. So it's super achievable. And then we can have success build and create momentum. And so here's an example of how this worked in practice for someone named Nikki, who worked at a salon called Citrus. And in 2 years, she tracked religiously and used some of the other Qnity tools. She really was very skilled at her craft, but just couldn't figure out how to make more money. In 2 years of doing this system, she went from 62,000 to 160 in total sales. Now, this salon has 30 team members. Imagine, Nikki obviously was a top performer in getting this growth, but imagine if everyone on your team increased 17%. Imagine if some people doubled her business like Nikki. Nikki well over doubled the total sales that she was driving to the business. She also was able to make much more money, buy a house, and really became much more equipped to develop as an entrepreneur. And so I want to talk about what entrepreneur means and what preneurship means. And depending on where you're located and your business experience, you may or not be struggling with kind of the move to solopreneurship, right? Or people, retaining staff and also making sure that you are attracting talent who really want to perform within an existing business. And so we teach something called preneurship, and this is not proprietary to Qnity, but it's a different way that we frame it that I think makes a lot more sense to both owners as well as individuals. And so there's really 3 types of preneurs, right? Probably most of you are entrepreneurs, right? Which means you have a business with a team, you have employees. That is our definition of an entrepreneur. They open a business with the intention to grow that business and build a team. Now, that can oftentimes really get confused with solopreneurship. Solopreneurship does not have a team, it is a business of one, right? There is a ceiling on solopreneur because you're only able to build based upon what you can produce. Whereas an entrepreneur, of course, has team and focuses on creating a scalable and sustainable business without just the production of one. And then an intrapreneur, this top one here, is really for service providers that work within an existing business, right? And I'll show you what I mean by that. And intrapreneurship is really someone who is defined as an employee, interfaces with customers, and is compensated based on performance, right? So an intrapreneur has the benefit of growing their business within the safety and without the risk of that an entrepreneur or even a solopreneur has, right? So it's a huge benefit. And so I would encourage you as leaders to really talk about money in and the benefits that you can provide for intrapreneurs and really framing it that way. And so this is just kind of another simple visual, and it's more applicable to money out. But I do want to show it here because a lot of times solopreneurs might think they make more money in. But the reality is for businesses of one and for entrepreneurs, some of the myths and traps is that the money out is substantially higher, of course, right? So maybe you might think you're making more money in as a solopreneur, but the money out and the expenses are substantial, right? Where as an intrapreneur, you really are compensated on what you'll produce, and you have tons of ways, but a few simple ways that you can drive money in, and your money out is really not much other than what you do at your household, right? So here's kind of an example highlighting on Qnity that I shared with you. And so I want you just to reflect and take a moment on some of these questions, and we're going to do just kind of an informal chat. Feel free to chat anything that you hear here, but what I want you to think about is, one, how successful are your service providers at sales? So are they understanding and do they have the knowledge and are they equipped to drive revenue in your business? So I want you to think about that. And then secondly to that is, do you have very simple and clear KPIs to communicate how to drive sales to your staff, right? If they're not driving sales, how can you be a little bit more simple and visual in the way that you speak to those numbers for your staff? And then also, how can you highlight the benefits of intrapreneurship to your team and really what that means, right? You're providing marketing, you're providing rent, you're providing a space for them where they can really just focus on driving those two numbers. So Eliza, is there anything in the chat that came up from that?
Yeah, there's actually a question. A couple of them now, they're coming in. What the audience doesn't know largely what KPIs are. Can you explain?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So KPIs are key performance indicators. Okay. So, and I'm sorry, I didn't have time to go through it on this webinar. So what that typically means is a key performance indicator is a way in which you measure performance, right? So sales, for example, is a clear KPI, right? So you might have multiple KPIs that you judge performance on for your team. And so that's what we mean by a KPI. Was there other questions, Eliza?
Well, now there's some feedback coming in. So your question one is growing. Someone else answered NA. Item number 2, someone answered NA. Just started. And 3, yes. So yeah, there's some couple of
Perfect.
I would rate them 3 out of 10 on sales skills.
Got it. So great interaction, you guys. I apologize, I can't for whatever reason, see your questions coming in, but just reflect on these and just take this back to your business. And if I can leave you with anything from this section, it's really communicate numbers in a very simple and visual way to your staff, and you will see difference in performance. And then also really recognize one of the benefits that you offer as an employer is providing a space for entrepreneurship, okay? All right, so now we are going to get to profit. And so,
Erin,
yeah, go for it.
one more good question. When and how do you introduce entrepreneurship? In a meeting?
Yeah, so typically it's incorporating it in various different meetings. A lot of times people will bring, us in to actually talk about that, to really educate your staff on that. So you could certainly do it in a meeting. You can certainly do it in your recruitment efforts and really talk about that you are providing a space for them as an entrepreneur, right? And really educating them on that. I would make sure that you are really equipped with the resources and educated on that subject so you can really speak to it with confidence, and we can absolutely help you to do so and give you some resources after this. But a meeting is a great place, in one-on-ones is a great place, and then also in recruitment efforts is a great place too. All right, so we're gonna dive into.
Yeah, I know we're probably pressed for time, but this is a good one.
Yeah.
Have you known any solopreneurs that converted their business to an entrepreneurship within another company?
So if I'm hearing that question specifically, yes. And what I would define that is that someone started as a solopreneur and then decided that they had hit a ceiling. And so they actually wanted to become an entrepreneur, to own a business, and they shifted and built up a salon with employees. And I've also seen solopreneurs that have maybe tried the game of solopreneur and realized that they actually prefer the lifestyle of an entrepreneur, right? So I've seen that go multiple different ways. And I do want to acknowledge, and I don't want to demonize someone who's a solopreneur, right? If we have any people on this call, there is absolutely a place, and some people really want to be a solopreneur. But what we have found in this industry is the bulk of people actually prefer entrepreneurship. There's oftentimes more opportunities, there's less risk. And so it really just depends on your style, right? And we have a full program that goes through the pros and cons of each of those preneurships. It's called Money Pro, and it's a benefit that you offer to your staff that really educates why the pros and cons really of each of those types of preneur. So hopefully that answered your question, and I'm happy to expand on that further. Any questions, Eliza? Are we good to keep moving?
We can go. Thank you. Got to thank you. A couple of thank yous.
Perfect. Okay. So profit, right? We talked about growth, and that's really bringing more money in. And if you're an entrepreneur with staff, the way you're going to bring more money in is obviously doing that through employees, right? It's not just you. Profit is really managing expenses and managing money out. And this is where, again, unfortunately, the finance function is one of the least sexy functions of the business, right? Let's be honest, it's not super fun to most people to cut expenses and manage it. But there is a way, when we look at that average that I showed you, 2 to 5%, by the way, many businesses are not profitable. There is a way to become highly profitable, and we have numerous examples of that, but it does require intention and focus around the profit function. So I want to show you some statistics around this. So profitability, again, that's money in versus money out. And the average small business has just 14 days liquidity. Okay, so that's not even profit, that's just liquidity. That's just cash in the bank to manage all expenses. And that's a very scary, scary place for businesses to live from. And we obviously saw the impact of that with COVID, right? And so it's making sure that you are fully prepared to not worry about hitting payroll, to make sure that you have cash reserve, and not just cash reserve, but that's also profit, right? 82% of business failures are due to poor cash flow management. And over 70% of small businesses operate off a budget, okay? So most salons and spas are small businesses, right? By definition, in many cases, you're micro businesses, right? And so that's very, unfortunately, normal for a lot of small businesses, and our really dream and hope is to help change that. And so one question that I want to ask here is, do you currently operate off a budget? And I want to kind of hear what the response is to that. Do you operate off a budget right now? And Eliza, you can let me know what we see back.
Yep. Couple of two no's, one yes. Nope. Nope. I don't know how. Starting in 2023.
Love
so
it.
Timing is good. Mostly percent based for back bar and retail.
Perfect.
So
Okay.
more no's than yeses, and some intention here.
I love it. Well, you guys, again, I want to say this is so exciting to be a part of, because the second we can be honest about this, the second we can start to change and move in a different direction. And so what I want you to really think of is, I want you to think back on your money why. And so from a business perspective, here's some of the common whys we hear from owners and leaders. And I really just want you to think about this as a reminder of why to start to focus on this function. And so it can be a couple of things, right? Here's some examples. Number one is freedom from worry. I'm also a small business owner, and so I have certainly experienced the worry that comes when you're growing and you don't know how you're going to pay your bills, you don't know how you're going to pay your staff, you don't know if you're going to be able to pay yourself. That is something we want to eliminate, and that enough is a money why for many business owners and leaders. Another why for people is they want to get to a place where they can reinvest and actually grow the business, right? Maybe they want to invest in education for their staff and training. Maybe they want to do a remodel. Maybe they want to expand to another location. And that is a reason to kind of kick them into gear to really take control of this function. Another one is, I don't know where you guys are at, but there's a lot of baby boomer owned businesses that will need to transition in the very near future. And in order to do that, you have to have a sustainable business that does not just rely on your performance, right? You have to have a business that can live without you. And so you need to increase the value of the business. And so you absolutely have to focus on the finance function as a starting place to do that. Next is to maintain a competitive edge, right? I think if COVID also showed us things, it was really survival of the financially fit that we really saw kind of lead the charge in that area, right? Those that were prepared for emergencies were able to kind of get through that period unscathed. No one was unscathed, right? Let's be clear on that. But it helps maintain a competitive edge if you're prepared financially. Next is, again, prepared for emergency, which, you know, I think we can all relate to that. Serving your community, that's a big why for people that are kind of in a different place in their business. They want to be able to do efforts just to better serve their community. Creating opportunity for the team, that is a huge one for a lot of business owners. A lot of times I see business owners that care more about their team than themselves. That's kind of the trait of a lot of entrepreneurs, right? The motivation isn't necessarily themselves, but it's their team and making sure that their team is in a greater financial place. And then this should be a why for everyone, because it just kills us when we see so many owners not compensating themselves. And you should be getting a salary outside of the profit, right? That should be factored into the business expense. It creates a lot of effort and you should be compensated for that. So I want you to think back, and I'd love to hear in the chat box, what are some of your money whys as far as taking control of this function? Go ahead and type in the chat box. What are some money whys?
Don't know how to compensate myself.
Big one. Okay, love it.
Give people another 15 seconds or so.
Okay.
Growth to sell my business, raising my kids as a single mom, flexibility with family responsibilities, increased profit margin, exit strategy, retirement, peace of mind.
Love it. Okay, so everyone's got their money wise. And so I also want you to really think about, especially because this was definitely compared to sales, this was the lowest function for this crew here. I want you to just type in the first 3 words that come to mind when it comes to thinking about the finance function of your business. And Eliza, just maybe do the first ones that come in just for time purposes, but I want to hear just a few words that come to mind when it comes to the finance function and managing that.
Uncertainty, growth potential, survive my business and bills.
Got it. Okay. So what I also want you to really recognize too is 73% of Americans, this is according to Capital One, rate finances as their number one stressor in life. So this is a very common thing that many people struggle with. So you're not alone on that. 66% of small businesses face financial challenges, with 43% claiming the most prominent one is the ability to pay operating expenses. And so I heard the word uncertainty, and that's a lot of times what we hear with businesses that are starting to really jump into this function. Many times it can be avoidance, intimidation, which fear, self-doubt, or you could also look at that with uncertainty or loss of control. Sometimes that's a reason not to take action. And so our goal at Qnity for you is to change those words to helping you feel more strategic, more confident, more empowered, and more in control and profitable, of course. And so a great example of this is Candace. I talked about Candace, a team member on Candace's team, and Candace is our lead coach for the profit and finance arm of our business. And Candace's journey was, she was at 0% profit when she came to us. She was a mom of a 5-year-old, and she could never spend time with her son because she was so stressed. And that really was enough for her to kind of get herself into gear and really take control of the finance function. And within just short amount of time, really focusing on this, she went from 0% profitability and stressed and overwhelmed to over 17%. And Candace will also tell you that 17% is after she takes what she refers to as a fat owner salary, which, by the way, you should not be ashamed of taking a fat owner salary, right? The purpose of business is to make a profit, of course, to make an impact as well, but it's to make a profit and make sure that you're also being compensated. And so it is very possible. It just takes focus. And so I want to go through just a few of the 8 common challenges, the 8 common challenges that we see with the finance function. So I've just put them on the screen here. And so you can kind of take a picture of this. And if you're doing any of these right now, that's kind of a great reason to kind of seek some support. But here's 8 common challenges, and I'm just going to leave these on the screen and let you read them just because I'm looking at time here and I want to make sure I'm respectful. But if you have a CPA that you trust, you can talk to them about this, because a lot of times CPAs that do not come from the beauty industry, they might not be aware of all this, right? The beauty industry is a very specific industry. So here's kind of some of the challenges that we see. So feel free to take a picture if you have not. But what I want to get into right away is the things that you can control with profit, okay? And here's the kicker, you guys. A lot of times, what I heard from you guys is profit was kind of the biggest opportunity here. And the reality is profit and growth are not actually entirely separate, because in order to have money left over, you have to have the appropriate money coming in. And so what you can control and what you can take action on is driving sales through seeing more clients and driving sales through average ticket. This is going to bring more money in, right? Again, you can't focus on money out if you don't have enough money coming in, right? There's only so much you can cut. Really, you have no ceiling when it comes to driving these 2 numbers. So I really want to illustrate that as a great starting point to really help the finance function too. Some other controllables that you can look at are professional supplies expenses, non-service related payroll, marketing expenses. We've seen that get a little bit crazy sometimes too. Education, retail commissions, sorry, these are populating funky, amenities for both client and staff, utilities, and then salon and office supplies. Those are kind of the top expenses that we see that you're able to control. Again, not ignoring that revenue is a key controllable here too. Another thing that we do, and again, this will depend on the size of your business. This is something that we teach in our Money SBO program, is having a name to every number. And again, this will really depend on your size of the business. But one of the things that Candace did to get from 0% to 17%, along with many actions, was also empower some of her team members to have a name to every number. And so it gives them financial responsibility and a spending threshold by designing something called name to every number. And so let me give you an example of this. So here you can see, this is the P&L. And you can see she started to give some specific accountability to different team members on these benchmarks and really on the P&L. You can see Candace is the owner here, but look at how Candace has started to empower some of her staff to really drive profitability. So it's a great example of how this would look in practice. And again, you know, showing that really driving revenue is a key component of this as well. And so one of Qnity tools that we teach is called a 9-grid. And so we also encourage people to create a 9-grid around this, which is really just mind mapping different strategies as it relates to you. So in this case, this is an example of a client who wanted to reduce her color expenses. And you can see she mind mapped different solutions on how to do this, which was really, really cool. And so again, really recognizing that what we're trying to do at Qnity and what the purpose of our time together was here today and is here is to eliminate the confusion and to really simplify many of these metrics to help you go from knowing to doing. And so here is a few key questions that I just want to pose to the group, and you can feel free to type them in the chat box or just think about them for a moment. But number one, which I already asked, was do you regularly operate off a budget? If you do not, this is a great place to start or move towards, right? And just even start small to start to get a budget in place so you're set up for success. Number two is, do you know your current profit margin, right? A lot of times, depending on the size of the business, many accounts do not know their profit margin, right? And so that's something you really, really want to make sure that you're taking control over and paying attention to. And then three, which I didn't talk about in this webinar, but another very common practice that Qnity teaches and many other kind of financial related companies teach is having a separate profit account that you regularly transfer funds into to build cash reserves. And we teach every week looking at the previous week's sales and transferring even a micro percentage of that into a separate account to build profitability. So that is a really, really great example to make sure that you've got cash reserves built up. So here's a great example of an account, and Laura Graven has a small business there in Wisconsin. They have, I think, about 11 team members, and they came to us a couple years ago, and I don't know what their profit margin is when they started with us, and I should get that just so we can see the difference. But what they did was they set up that the principle of transferring profit into a separate account, and within 1 year, they built $100,000 in business savings. And they rolled out a price increase, and they both, there's two owners, increased their owner salaries while stepping away from behind the chair, right? All of this is very possible. No one is smarter than you. Nobody is better at math than you. Maybe there's some people are right, but the bulk of majority of people are just prioritizing finance, right? And so that's really what I want to empower you to do today, to really think about. And so financial wellness, we talked about this. This is the overall financial picture for you, for your team, and also your life. And so it really, really kills us when we see salon owners not compensating themselves, not taking a salary. And for many service providers, not understanding the money component and how to drive their paycheck as an entrepreneur. And so we talked about the prevalence of math and money anxiety. One thing that we didn't talk about is over half of employees state they live paycheck to paycheck. By the way, this is not just in the beauty industry, this is industry-wide, or I'm sorry, this is across all industries. Even people making a lot of money oftentimes don't manage it appropriately and still live paycheck to paycheck. Financially stressed employees are also twice as likely to look elsewhere. That's from PricewaterhouseCoopers. So really paying attention to this is important, not just from the financial wellness perspective of the business, but also from a retention perspective. And so I want to illustrate a story with some research that we've done at Qnity. And this is someone named Adam, and we blurred Adam's face. This is actually a stock photo. We wanted to protect him. And his name is not actually Adam, but he's a real person. And Adam came to us earlier this year, and he works at a salon, and we know the owner very well, and we've done a lot of work with him, and he's the lead director of education. And he came to us with a confidential concern, and that concern was he was being underpaid by his owner. And so we said, okay, Adam, what's going on? And he said, well, I'm being underpaid, and I have three options. I'm gonna ask my boss for a raise again, which he had already done, and the boss had given him a raise and made it clear that the business did not have opportunity to do so. 2 was to go solo, or 3 was to leave the industry. And so we asked Adam and kind of peeled the onion a little bit, how much money he was making. And Adam couldn't tell us how much money he was making, okay? He had no idea. And so as we helped him do the math, granted, keep in mind, Adam has been in the industry for over 20 years. He's very talented, and he also has an educator role, but he's making $147,000 a year, okay? That puts Adam in the top 8% of all earners in the United States. And Adam was shocked to figure this out, and he realized, whoa, that's not exactly being underpaid, right? But he had no data and no barometer to actually measure that off of, and he didn't even know how much money he was making. And unfortunately, that is also very, very common in the salon and spa industry. So not only did Adam not have the data, we provided him the data to see where he was from a performance perspective, but what we also helped him realize was he lacked financial literacy. He had never paid attention to his paycheck. He had never really paid attention to his money out. And so the story that he told himself was he was being underpaid, but the real story when he got some data was, A, he's in the top 8% of all earners in the United States. That's across industries. That's not just in the beauty industry. And he was really making some poor money out decisions. He wasn't managing his money in, and he had never started to prepare. And so that's really where the challenges in his situation lies. And so some of the research that we've been doing here at Qnity is around earnings in professional beauty. So when we look at, okay, what does the average beauty and wellness professional make? Let's say cosmetologists to start, what do they make? There's not a whole lot of data on it. And the reality is the data that's out there is not compelling. This is a number from an organization called the Century Foundation. They state that the average service provider, cosmetologist specifically, makes just $16,000 a year, okay, on average, which is crazy and very different than what we've seen, doing studies in the industry for years. But the Bureau of Labor Statistic also shows an average hourly wage of $17.30. Now, there's a lot of different reasons around why these numbers are what they are, which I don't have time to go into right now. But what I want you to recognize for your perspective is if you're struggling to find staff, which many of our accounts and many of the salons in the industry that we see are indeed struggling with, you have to, and you cannot ignore that when someone goes online and sees earning potential like this, we're really missing the ability to attract talent that see the possibilities to build a financially lucrative career off this, okay? We find very, very different numbers from this, okay? We did a study, and Rosy actually was an advocate for this study, and we wanted to find out, is that true? And one of the things that we see is just a lack of really looking at data and addressing the various fragmentation in industry, right? You can't look at someone who's working at a salon for 40 hours a week and compare that with someone doing hair out of their bathroom 2 hours a week, right? And still reporting that they are a cosmetologist, because that's very different career trajectories. So we addressed one sector of the market and looked at W-2 earnings of cosmetologists in the United States. And we took data directly from W-2s. So it was arguably the most verifiable data that you could possibly do. And that's why we just started with this sector of the workforce. We took this data from across 330 salon locations, analyzing the W-2s of just under 3,400 cosmetologists. And these businesses collectively represented $175 million in payroll compensation. And what we found was we produced a full report. The report is 90 pages long, so I don't have time to go through it today. It's on our website, and I'll make sure you guys can figure out how to get that full report and read about it. But we found average hourly rate of over $38 an hour. We found average hourly wages of over $54,000 a year, but that was on average service providers working 27 hours a week. Now, if we factored that in for someone who wanted to work 40 hours a week, the average earnings would be $79,000 a year, almost $80,000 for a cosmetologist, right? So it also behooves us as owners and leaders to make sure if someone wants to make more money, the way to do that is to work more hours, right? That's how we can help people increase their earnings, work more hours, but also look at how they can drive sales. And so that really comes through education. And unfortunately, it's really on the owners and you guys to provide that kind of environment, and we can absolutely help you do so, right? Because they're not going to come out of the womb prepared for that. So I also want to share a couple other studies on research that we find around financial literacy. So I'm going to populate this quickly. Now, this, we work with schools and professionals, right, and owners and leaders, and we ask a few questions in pre-programmed surveys. For students, this is active students in a cosmetology, nail, aesthetic, barber, or massage program. 68% of students state they do have money anxiety, okay? The most common words that come up when it comes to money are stressed, hard, and anxiety. 76% of these students, almost 77%, so 3 out of 4 students have had 0 financial related education, okay? They rate themselves as a 5 out of 10 on financial literacy, which is just understanding money and numbers. And they rate themselves as a 6 out of 10 on financial confidence. Now, we also ask these same questions to professionals in the industry. And look at how fascinating this is. Money anxiety actually goes up. Okay, so this is for already people that are out in the industry, very slightly, but it does go up. The 3 most common words are hard is replaced with freedom, but still stressed, hard, and anxiety. So a little bit more of them get financial related education, but still 70% about have no financial related education. Still 5 out of 10 on financial literacy and a 6 out of 10 on financial confidence. So what we're seeing is without the intervention of a financial literacy or financial related education, these numbers don't change. And so what is also really interesting is in our Money SBO program, we ask this for owners. And owners, unfortunately, also many times relate to this. And now they're responsible not only for trying to educate their staff on this, but manage the finance function of their business and life. And so that's really what I want to illustrate. The solution begins with education. So you guys are here, Rosy's providing this webinar. It's totally free to get this education. And so there's lots of ways you can start to learn about this that cost no money. And so what I really want to leave you with is it just starts with the willingness to change and see stuff different, right? And so of course, as Rosy has provided this webinar, you've got free education, but we do have opportunities for you to continue with us if you feel like you want some more support. Now, if any of you guys want to learn about this, I would, based on what I saw from the answers in this call, consider attending our Money SBO program. It's March 13th and 14th in Minneapolis. This is where you'll go through a 2-day intensive and you will leave with a full plan to drive profit in your business and manage the finance function. Like you will leave with clarity and confidence so you actually know exactly what you need to do. And that's really our focus at Qnity. So that's happening March 13th and 14th, and I'll put information in the chat and I'll give you a QR code to learn more as well, but I would highly recommend that for you. We also have Money Pro, which is a financial wellness benefit you can offer your staff. So you can obviously benefit from this too, but this is something that you can offer your staff to help them understand, like we talked about entrepreneurship and how to drive their own money in. We have a way for you to work with us individually on more of a coaching basis that you can learn about called Qnity in Action. And then I also want to encourage you to consider attending our annual event. Rosy is a very proud sponsor of this. Rosy joined us there this first year. And so Rosy clients do get 20% off this event. It is in Austin on the 21st through 23rd. That's a great way where you can learn more about all of this too. And it's it's an affordable price point to kind of get started with Qnity. So we'd love to see you there. And also Rosy gets 20% off. So what I would really encourage you to do is to scan this QR code. And if you're not sure where to start, we are not a pushy organization. We're just here to make sure you have support and information. So scan this QR code and we can kind of give you some more details. Otherwise, if you like to, I'm going to post our Instagram. That's a great way to see. I don't know if that went in the chat box. I'll also try it in the question box.
We can share it. Well, we can share it, Erin. And then also everybody that attended and registered for this webinar today is going to get a copy of the webinar. So they will be able to review all of these best practices, because there were way too many to just recap. I was trying to make notes, but there were so many different things and solutions for people. So scan the QR code, but you will get this also, so you can stay connected. And yes, Rosie is very excited to attend the Phil again this coming spring. So yes.
Amazing. And so I'll make sure you guys get that coupon code. And look at that, we are right on time. So
right on time.
We are right on time. I am going to stop my screen share and make sure I open it up for any questions. But hopefully everyone was able to get that QR code. And if you didn't, type in the chat so I can make sure I give it to you. And we're happy to support you in any way.
Elisa, is there any other questions?
Yeah, a couple of questions.
Yes.
And you know, we're right at time, but maybe we can follow up with some of these people. But does Qnity provide CPA services like tax filing? Or would you start with the CPA?
Services, but we do have a recommendation that we can give you.
Okay. Okay.
So just email me or chat or use that QR code, and I can ask. I can learn about kind of. We have a couple recommendations. I just want to have a conversation with you to make sure we provide the right one.
Yeah. Someone asking about more online courses. Yes. I'm sure you know that Qnity has them. I'm not sure if you're talking about Rosy provided classes or Qnity, but both do quite a bit of things. Yeah.
Awesome.
Let me see. Lots of thank yous. So thank you, Erin, for all this great information. Any more questions? If we miss some, we will get a report and follow up on questions that we missed in the event that we missed some. So thank you very much.
Perfect. Well, thank you all so much.
Thanks, Erin. Thanks for joining. Thank you for completing our best practices series. Save the best one for last. This has been a ton of beneficial information for everybody. So I hope that they all start paying themselves a salary outside of their business profit and plan it in their budgets. So thank you so much. And everybody have a great Monday.
Thanks, Lori. Thanks, team.
Bye.
Thanks to Rosie for hosting.